There are no people in the future.
There are no people.
There are no people in the future.
No people at all.
There are no people in the future.
Where did all my people go?
There are no people in the future.
Let me try my people call. Where are all my people? Where are all my people? I guess I'll fly away now.
Hey, everybody, welcome. It is Friday, December 3rd, 2021. Yes, we are in December. Welcome to Raging Chicken's Altitude Podcast. Yes, it's our Friday's Politics Roundup, everybody. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken. Each week, I talk to the one, the only, Sean Kitchen, about the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. You can support this show by becoming a patron for as little as $5 a month. Simply head on over to patreon.com/rcpress to become a patron today. You can also help out the show by heading on over to our YouTube channel if you're not there already. Smash that subscribe button, like the stream for this show, and hit that notification bell so you know every time we go live. On today's show, the Supreme Court's right-wing majority seems prepared to deal the death blow to Roe v. Wade, sending women's autonomy and equality back generations. Rebecca Traister's article in New York Mag, The Betrayal of Roe, should be at the top of your reading list as we prepare for a protracted fight. And the Omicron transform variant of the COVID-19 virus has now been confirmed in 5 U.S. states: California, Colorado, Minnesota, New York, and Hawaii. Strap in, folks. Winter is coming. No government shutdown after the conservatives caved last night. There you go. I know everyone's been following that, right? Anyways, and I was so glad to see that Daily Beast got it right, that Steve Bannon's January 6th legal strategy is just blowing up the whole system, right? Well, I'll get into this in the show, but it's just been driving me crazy in some of the coverage of Steve Bannon. I'm like, you just don't know his game, do you? Anyways, Honduras elected its first female president, Xiomara Castro, from the leftist Liberty and Refoundation Party. Her husband, Manuel Zelaya, was president from 2006 to 2009, was ousted by a military coup, and the kind of right wing had been in power until this past election, so congrats. And Barbados boots the Queen and becomes a republic. Yes, even Rihanna is also from Barbados, and she was kind of honored as a national hero at that. And Prince Charles gave a very kind of cringeworthy speech about the dark days of the British Empire when, slaves. It was a little weird, a little uncomfortable. Anyways, and speaking of getting booted, Chris Cuomo also got the boot from CNN this week. Technically got the full boot, but he got a good swift kick in the ass after it was revealed that he worked with his brother, the former and disgraced New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, on a communications strategy following multiple allegations of sexual misconduct on part of the former governor. Like he was actually working his media contacts and things like this. Pretty crazy. Well, a little closer to home here today. Well, we're not in Kansas anymore. Nope, just Pennsylvania. Yes, daytime TV host Dr. Oz has officially announced his campaign for the U.S. Senate. You heard it first. We gave you the warning. We said it was coming. The New Jersey resident is looking to run as a Republican for Pennsylvania's open Senate seat if he can find his Pennsylvania house. And David McCormick, president of the venture capitalist firm Bridgewater, is also getting in to run for Pennsylvania's U.S. Senate. Expect McCormick to become the frontrunner given his connections to the Trump infrastructure. And especially after, I don't know if anybody's seen the Oz media appearances this week, so it looks like Dr. Oz is going to be the flame that burns out fast, I think. But we shall see. And Central Bucks School District is back in the New York Times following their 2-part podcast on the explosive school board meetings about mask requirements and critical race theory. In the latest article, we get to see the real crises hitting the district regarding inadequate staffing, overcrowded classrooms, and declining resources, even in this fairly well-off Bucks County School District. And the PA1, right here in Bucks County, Republican Representative Brian Fitzpatrick is getting primaried from his right. Not from one, but 2 candidates. That's right. Last week, Percy resident Percy, like where apparently the demon rift has opened up somewhere in town. We got to freaking seal that shit up. Anyways, last week, Percy resident and America First Party guy Bradley Lanning announced his challenge to Fitzpatrick. And just yesterday, Trumpista Caroline Avery of Bristol threw in her hat to the ring because she said that Fitzpatrick, quote, ignores the Trump agenda, ignores the Constitution, votes with the anti-American Democrat members, and basically doesn't represent anybody or anything but himself in Congress. She raises horses, by the way. It's going to be a wild ride. Yeah, and today's last call, I don't know, some fun stuff to throw in. Could mushroom leather be in your future? Could be, according to a new article in The Guardian. And I've been diving into the Wheel of Time and the new season of Star Trek Discovery. I'll give you a kind of a little quick reads on that. No spoilers, I promise. And in just a couple weeks, when I get some time, when my semester finishes, I'm going to be jumping into the Foundation on Apple Plus. Foundation is like, which I didn't know, thanks to one of our listeners, Chris, for letting me know that the series is actually based on Isaac Asimov's classic Foundation series, which I can't believe I didn't make the connection at the time. Now I'm doubly interested. We're going to check that out kind of coming up. So we'll see what else Sean is up to for the weekend. And for more PA-based progressive talk, tune into the Rick Smith Show's live stream at 9 p.m. Eastern on his YouTube channel, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you get your streams. Subscribe to his podcast wherever you get your podcast. Look, you just got to head over to ricksmithshow.com for all the latest across all his platforms, because frankly, I can't keep up with it enough to make sure that, I'm covering it all. I mean, he's like KPFK in Los Angeles, WBAI in New York, just got picked up in Minnesota, just got picked up also in Chicago. He just had his first show in Chicago this past week, freaking tearing it up. So get on over there, ricksmithshow.com for all the latest across all those platforms. And if you haven't already, you got to check out the Sisters of the Night Caucus podcast. You can find it on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. The amazing PA women stirring the political cauldron behind this podcast rock the house, and they know where their bodies are buried. And make sure to follow them on Twitter at The Night Caucus. That's at The Night Caucus on Twitter. And by the way, if you are not following Shanna Danielson on Twitter or Instagram, whatever it is, it's about time, because you got to get in the Christmas spirit, because she's playing all her Christmas carols and her duets, right, on her flute, and I saw her on a ukulele here. Get in the spirit and head on over and follow Shanna Danielson. Oh, yes. And attention gamers, the Game Inn is a Quakertown-based, black family-owned gaming store. And look, the holidays are right around the corner. People are gift buying. If you want to kind of put your money kind of where it matters, check out the Game Inn. That's with two N's. The Game Inn is in Quakertown. They're friends of the show, and they've got everything from retro N64s, the latest consoles, video games for all platforms, collectibles, action figures, Funko Pops. And look, kids get a discount for every A on their report card. Check them out on their Facebook page at The Game Inn. Follow them on Twitter at The Game Inn, with two N's. And if you got, looking for something that's hard to find, looking for something, especially if you're into the retro stuff, definitely check them out. Shoot them an email at thegameinpa@gmail.com. Special shout out goes to Jonathan Mann, of course, who wrote our intro song, There Are No People in the Future. Check out all his great stuff on his YouTube page, and follow him on Twitter at SongAdayMan. That's with two N's, at SongAdayMan on Twitter. And for this coming Monday on Out the Coop Live, I've got a couple irons in the fire. We're kind of dealing with some scheduling stuff, so follow us on our socials to let us know what's coming up on this Monday. It'll be one of three things. That's all I want to say right now. I don't want to spoil anything, but hopefully that some scheduling is going to work out for that. If not, the default will be that we'll do an open phones, but I think that we'll be able to have someone on. But in 2 weeks, on December 13th, I'm going to welcome teacher and writer Dina Lagerman to the show. We'll be talking about her recent article, Central Bucks is Not Okay, about the recent New York Times podcast featuring the Central Bucks school board fights, right-wing funder Paul Martino, and her experiences as a candidate running for the Central Bucks school board. Do not miss this one. Lagerman, she ran for school board office. Some of her experiences of what she had to deal with the goons put on by Paul Martino and company is absolutely critical, and she's freaking awesome. So I can't wait to have her on the show on December 13th. That's a Monday at 7 p.m. Want to remind you, look, if we want a progressive future. Oh, I got to give a shout out. Today. Thank you to Chuck. Chuck became a patron this week. Thank you, Chuck, for becoming a patron this week. And because Chuck knows what everybody out there should know. Because if we want a progressive future, we need progressive media. Support Pull No Punches, homegrown progressive media today. Become a patron of Raging Chicken for as little as $5 a month. Just head on over to patreon.com/rcpress. We're here for the fight, and we need you. Become a patron for the price of a good beer once a month. Help keep the media in the movement in the media. Become a patron for as little as $5 a month by heading on over to patreon.com/rcpress today. Well, Sean, man, it's great to see you. Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
Yes, it did. How was yours?
It was great. It was probably the best Thanksgiving I've had in ages. In part because my wife had off. Right, my kids got along. We had just had a really nice time. It was a great Thanksgiving day. Unfortunately, my brother and sister-in-law, my niece, weren't there for Thanksgiving Day, but it was wonderful. It was just a great time. We actually got to play D&D one day. Was happening, made it all the best to cap off the week. So. Yeah, it was good. Did you have a big Thanksgiving feast, or how'd it go?
Ours was pretty good. We went to my brother's house in Roxborough. He lives like right next to like Chubby's and D'Alessandro's in that area, if you know like where Ridge Ave's at. We had it there with my sister-in-law's family. So we had two separate tables. I was at the kids' table with everyone else. No, it was me, my sister.
Were they little chairs too? Did you have to sit like wait?
It was a small table. It was folding chairs and stuff like that. No, it was me, my sister, and then my sister-in-law's her sister and her boyfriend, and then the two kids. So
yeah. How the kids?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Very hyper. My nephew is 2 now, and he's just running around the house like constantly.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So it was fun. It was a nice time.
Good. Awesome. Good to hear it. Well, look, I mean, first and foremost, I mean, this week, I mean, I don't know. I actually listened to the Supreme Court arguments on Wednesday. It's like my office hours day on campus. And I'm doing.
You really like being down.
Yeah, I have this thing, I'm reminded of, I remember I have this, Seth, right? My friend Seth Kahn down at Westchester is like, he and I had this conversation once. It's like, I've always had this, I don't know what to call it, but I've always at these particular moments, kind of historical moments, right? That I've seen, I feel like I want to experience it like live and in person, like as it's happening. And there's no, I mean, it's not like I can affect anything or anything like this, but there's something about that. It's always been part of it. And I remember when we had the strike vote, the statewide strike vote, to when the strike date was going to be and the authorization was going to be with ABSCUF, they had an emergency meeting out in State College for that strike vote. And I drove there for it. I mean, literally, I drove to State College, and the meeting took about like I don't know, less than an hour, right? I brought my son with me, right, with his little dragon castle and everything like this, and I remember other people said, like, I don't know, I needed to go there, right, and whatever. I'm like, but I really wanted to be there, right? It was really important to me, and I think that those arguments on Wednesday too, as well. It's almost like I wanted to hear the arguments before I started hearing all the spin that was coming out in the media, because I have to say, a lot of the media was pretty dead on in their assessment of it. It was pretty freaking brutal.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna be heading towards a country where we don't have access to Roe v. Wade, access to abortion anymore.
Right.
Like that's appalling. Like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
It's appalling to even think about it, in my opinion. But I mean, it's something that this is an issue Democrats have dragged their feet on.
Yeah.
For decades.
Yep.
because, you know, for the longest time, you had a large pro-life wing of the party, i.e., Bob Casey and stuff like that, where like even when there's times that they've had power, they've never took it as a serious issue. And I mean, you're seeing it now. Like Senate Democrats tweeted something. You saw that tweet that was put out there by one of the campaign committees or something,
Yeah.
or like a Senate or a Democratic account, where like, "Hey, we need to protect abortion rights," and people were like, "Fucking do something."
Right.
I mean, like you know what I mean?
Right. No, exactly. And I think that, you know, Rebecca Traister, and I mentioned here, like I literally I kept on like heading on over to her Twitter feed and stuff because I think I've absolutely loved her take on all this for a long time. I mean, she has been basically like shouting at the top of her lungs for as long as I can kind of remember that like Democrats need actually to fight on this issue, right? And not just kind of like say the right thing. And so like I don't normally want to do this on the show, but I want to read just a couple pieces from Traister's piece. She's got this piece in the New York Mag called "The Betrayal of Roe." And she basically starts off saying, like, look, you know, I know that there's going to be a lot of finger pointing of blaming. They're wanting to say, look at who was responsible, which individual, which organization, whatever like this, and finger pointing. But she's basically saying, like, look, that might kind of serve us in the kind of short run, but we need a deeper kind of analysis. And this is kind of what she says. She says, that impulse to blame just in what looking for an individual is short-sighted and self-serving, and that it allows us to evade the far more suffocating and incriminating reality that we got to this terrifying place not just by some wrong term made recently by one wrong person we don't like, but by decades-long systemic failures. The biggest and most damning of these is the failure to counter a regressive movement's project to ensure minority rule and thus dismantle the rights and protections won by activists who labored over generations to gain them, abortion rights being very much included. That failure, in turn, reflects a deeper one, an unwillingness to take the full humanity of women, of pregnant people, of black and brown and poor people seriously. The overturn of Roe will not be about one failed electoral campaign or a badly timed Supreme Court death or failure to retire, though those, as with any historical cataclysm, its timing and shape will have been determined by those factors, sure. But Roe, like the Voting Rights Act that was gutted in 2013, and the labor and climate and anti-corporate and gay rights protections that have been and will continue to be rolled back, would not have been made vulnerable to these quirks of timing and personality had it ever had the kind of institutional, ideological, intellectual, and emotional muscle behind it that it deserves. Its loss will reflect years of inattention from those entrusted with its guardianship. By definition, the people nearest to the top of the power structures, people who advertise themselves as invested in the rights and protections of people closer to the bottom, yet who have repeatedly failed to prioritize the people's dignity and well-being. And we even really see, and she goes on, but then she says, the last thing I'll read from this, it says, the Democratic Party, including its presidents over the decades, has not taken seriously enough the threat to abortion rights. It's not that these politicians didn't officially support the correct thing. Barack Obama opposed the Hyde Amendment, but also described the tradition in this town historically of not financing abortion as part of government-funded healthcare, unquote. And again, this is not about Barack Obama any more than it is about Hillary Clinton, who offered one of the most powerful public explications of abortion as public health as any Democrat during her debate against Donald Trump, and who also has said and has devised the regressive, quote, safe, legal, and rare framework of the 1990s that cast abortion as a regrettable, necessary evil, not a cornerstone of comprehensive health care, or about Bernie Sanders, who has remained a staunch opponent of the Hyde or any other abortion restriction throughout his career, and has argued that voters could get past their differences on gun and abortion and find common economic ground, as if abortion is not itself an economic issue. And she goes on, and the rest of that article, which I'll put a link of it in the show notes, is a really systemic and deep critique of the unwillingness to actually campaign on Roe. And saying that basically this myth that came out of the right wing that this is a divisive issue, when in poll after poll after poll, it's an incredibly popular issue.
It has like 70% support.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, like, here we have this I mean, I feel like there's part of it that she had. It's not just Roe. Yes, it is Roe right now, but it's the attacks on labor. It's the attacks on Roe. It's like it's a concerted effort to completely dismantle and disarm your political opposition that this court is going through with. Like,
Right,
they're
and
just doing it in a slow motion type of way.
absolutely, and I think
I mean,
her point there too as well, though, right, is that yes, and right, part of what this comes down to, right, is
we're
also,
dealing with this now because of decades of inaction.
right, but we're talking about also and talking about back like a failure to take seriously like the desire by the right wing, right, to re-energize patriarchy and subordinate women in a systemic way. And I think that's what, Tracer has been talking about that like for forever, and I think
We're also seeing it with I think we're and that's we're seeing it with our politics now, like the patriarchy, but the chauvinism and stuff like that.
absolutely.
And it's we were talking again like before the podcast, like just being on some of these phone calls. We just spent the past year talking about the Build Back Better plan. There's no mobilization happening on the left right now. We've completely demobilized. No one's at capacity to get stuff done. And like the right wing just spent this whole entire past year just building and gaining and pushing the ball forward from the insurrection. That all pretty much all white men, who have been arrested from this. And like look what they're doing. Like they're running with school board stuff, or that Stephen Lynch, an actual fucking Nazi.
Yep.
Actual Nazi. Who put like 20 strong men, like, people who are calling themselves strong men, running for office and getting 45% of the vote.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I think, and I do think that this is why I think it's I when I'm saying I think Rebecca Tracer's article should be required reading right now, it's because she talks about the structural problem, right, and the unwillingness to fight around kind of like key issues, right? When she talks about disrespecting women and people of color and the poor and working people, that's what she's getting right into.
And Democrats don't want to lift the fucking hand.
No, and I think that we've talked about this. I mean, as long as we've had this podcast, we've talked about the Democratic Party walking away from its working class, supposed working class.
It's all about thinking about this stuff. It's all about their own personal brand, and when it comes to doing the work, forget about it. Like it's not happening. Like it's just
that's right. Well,
it's just part of the movement, like with this or the Democratic Party in general. Like, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I'm reading Jane McAlevy's latest book, which is called A Collective Bargain: Unions Organizing and the Fight for Democracy. And if you weren't convinced from by her book No Shortcuts, right, for example, that you need to be reading everything that she's reading, or her other book, was it Raising Expectations and Raising Hell. This book is just more evidence of that. And what's interesting is that she goes through a series of case studies of actual organizing at one point. One of them is okay, what is it? PASNAP, right? One of it,
yes.
As PASNAP, the nurses union, because they're coming out of Philadelphia and Philadelphia area. But more so, she goes through systematically what actual organizing requires, right? And she's one of the best organizers. I think people might disagree with her take on building grassroots power, right? Rank and file power from the ground up in democratic unions, those business unions out there. But nonetheless, is that she's dead on. And I think that having that kind of long-term perspective about what it's going to take to build power, I think we're going to have to find ways of internalizing that in a really direct way that this is going to take a long time. Right. This is going to take a long time to really take back the power. And part of that is going to be fights within, say, the Democratic Party or against the Democratic Party. It's going to be about building kind of counter structures, and it's going to be rejecting this kind of like, whatever, election cycle to election cycle kind of short-term thinking that is so embedded in the kind of liberal to left politics when it comes to electoral politics, at least.
Yeah, and there's no like concentration on paying attention to like courts on the Democratic side. Like, there's just like, I mean, like Democrats don't pay attention to courts or school boards, like,
or like school boards, municipalities, about kind of thinking like strategically and structurally, right? And look, and I understand, it's like, look, the right wing, here's the thing about authoritarianism, right? And authoritarians, right, is like they can be more efficient in terms of their directions, right? So that you've got these billionaires, right, this huge concentration of wealth on the right, that can target a particular thing and just like fund multiple institutions, multiple organizations, and they could all work in the same direction.
Like
right?
critical race theory.
Exactly. Right. I mean, pick your issue that the right has picked up. Right. And, the attacks on labor, the attacks against Roe v. Wade. I mean, what we saw in, the Supreme Court this past week, I mean, that didn't just happen. I mean, that started like 3 weeks after Roe was decided. Right. That's a long-term campaign. Right. To
decades long.
Absolutely. Just like the attack on just like the attack on labor, right? Exactly. And so it's
I mean, like Weyrich back in the 80s when they don't vote, we win.
Yep. Exactly. And it's like, I think that, I did mention that I meant to put this in the show notes too, but, we just had Stacey Abrams, for example, just announced that she's running for governor in Georgia again. As someone who's been fighting on that question of voting rights, right? As you bring up Paul Weyrich, right? That's the other end of it, right? The attempt to kind of like roll back voting rights to the point where we saw elections getting kind of like corrupted in a systemic way, right? Not in this kind of like, the stop the steal nonsense that the Trump folks say, but a really systemic kind of organized fashion, right? By restricting people's access to the ballot, right? And that's part of the game. So it's like, I think about that in terms of long-term organizing, and it's on the one hand, it's daunting, but on the other hand, it seems there's a certain bit of clarity about what needs to happen. And, I'm thinking about what's happening in Bucks County, and I'm not going to get into this right now, but I mean, what happened in Bucks County where you have, on the Democratic side, always kind of searching for these candidates to run against Fitzpatrick, right? Where, there's not been a systemic effort to kind of build up a foundation of a kind of like organic power within the county. It's really been, about kind of like who's going to poll well, or who's got, ticks the right boxes when it comes to running against Fitzpatrick and their algorithms, right? Without that kind of building a power. And I think that's, that's going to be, this is the legacy that we're inheriting right now in the progressive.
Not even like with Fitzpatrick, right? You saw even on a smaller scale with that, like Bucks campaign that they've put together for the row offices, and they all got swept.
Yep.
Like putting out like, oh, we love the police as well. Like as like a counterattack to like defund the police.
Exactly.
And it's just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's all like, there's no, like, one, you're responding to a stupid attack, and two, you're responding to that attack with their same framework. Like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And it's just like, it's like, that's the type of stuff they were focusing on. And just like, you're not going to win elections in counties like Bucks County when you don't have anything that you can sustain. Like
there's no infrastructure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about like what you look at what happened in Cumberland County, right? And kind of in the last, you look at what like Shannon Danielson did, and Tara Shakespeare, right? And that the whole crew that ran for the all women really that ran for office kind of out in the Harrisburg area, right? I mean, they were operating by building this from the ground up, right? And I know they did this over a course of a couple different cycles, but it's relying upon, right, these individuals, right, to assert their will to kind of like create this infrastructure, when we should be kind of directing our organizations to actually fund this stuff.
And
right?
it's also like, this is what happens when you get parties that are more about being a social club,
right,
than like a functioning organization.
right. Yeah, and I would also say when the primary concern that these like organizations, when they're getting together and kind of talking about strategy, is like the primary concern needs to be power, right? Like it needs to be about sustained building power over time. And there's on our side of the thing, right? And I mean kind of the broad left, right? There is only one source of that power, and that's people, and that's organization. Regardless. I mean, and like I've said before, I've seen the absolutely amazing organization going on, but I look at, you saw that people protesting outside the Supreme Court. I saw a kind of bunch of interviews and things like this, but I mean, you could feel it, and people just like feeling like we've been betrayed. And again, I go back to Tracer again. It's like, this has been allowed to happen. This is when, the attention has not been focused, right, on defending kind of fundamental thing. And like, again, now we're all playing catch up, but we're playing catch up in the worst possible way. So it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot to take in, I guess. It's a lot to take in right now. So yeah, so is that. So I mean, look, we're not going to know. I think they're expecting decisions to come down in kind of March or April, I believe, maybe even May, which will be. We'll see what happens with this. There's another case that is coming up. I think they might be arguing it next week, actually. That is going to challenge basically public school funding. Right. I mean, you got like a 6-3 majority of these folks on the court now, and like the right.
And then you're going to have Justice Breyer, who's going to pull at Ginsburg.
Yeah.
And pretty much die when, like die on the bench when there's a Republican in office instead of just resigning right now, and then hand over and make it a 7-2 court.
Yep.
I mean.
Yep. And maybe the Democrats will get lucky to like not have one of those kind of like, like, I don't know, octogenarian senators die like suddenly and lose the majority because they just like have not cultivated like a depth of a bench. But we shall see. Anyways, I don't want to get too far afield on that, but we shall see. I mean, this is I was the one other thing I want to comment about those arguments in the Supreme Court. What is this is one of the benefits of listening to the arguments. And I think that it's sobering in a different kind of way, because on the one hand, the content of the arguments that were made by, say, Kavanaugh or Amy Coney Barrett, right? I mean, the astonishing thing, like Amy Coney Barrett got a lot of attention just by saying like, well, since you got adoption, right? Really? What's the problem? Right? Like, I mean, so you don't have to be a mother. You just give it up, right? Like, I mean, she wasn't saying it like that, but that was the intention. And then Brett Kavanaugh basically just being the dick that he is. I mean, just like whatever. But what the difficulty, the struggle is when you heard them make the arguments, right? Even what they were saying and the consequences, the implications of what they were saying were like radical and extreme. They said them in these very kind of polite tones.
I mean, and also, like, do you really expect Democrats to do anything or hold accountability? Like, this week they closed Congress without censuring, like, Boebert for her Islamophobic, like, rant against Ilhan Omar, but that same Democratic leadership ran to censure Omar when she made, like, benign statements about Israel's treatment towards the Palestinians.
Right, exactly.
People. Like, and Democrats did that. Like, like it. Like, this is the party we're dealing with. Like, solidarity is not a fucking verb. It's not in like any of their fucking dictionaries from like Steny Hoyer and like this
Right.
old like liberal, like, you know, geriatric wing of the party.
Right.
These fucking 90-year-olds that are still like in power that are responsible for this.
Absolutely, 100%.
Like, I mean, yeah, they allowed this stuff to go on, like Boebert. Like, is it going to take for a fucking congressperson to get killed until they like take it seriously? No.
That's what that's what it would take. And then even then, I mean, look,
Gabby Giffords, it still didn't take it seriously.
Right, exactly, right. We just had a freaking insurrection, right? That threatened all of their lives, right? That, I mean, there could have been someone, and where are we now?
And they're fucking that up.
Totally. Right. I mean, so let's, you know, it's so, I mean, I say it to have the problem posed as opposed to kind of saying like, just to lay the critique. I do think that's something that, I'm thinking a lot about right now.
I don't want to like think about this, but it almost feels like that part of like reading Shock Doctrine, where like we've all just been lobotomized as a year, like as a society for like what's been happening over this past year.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like everything we're experiencing now is just like is normal because of the malaise. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, and it's this weird thing, and I've talked.
It's just like there's this malaise. No one's.
Well, and it's like, you know, it's this.
There's just been this demobilization on the left, or like in the Democratic base.
It's really hard to say though, because I have this. I start to go in that direction too as well, but then I'm looking at all the like the organizing that is going on, and if you look at the kind of, I mean, at the same time as this, you've got like an uptick of labor organizing, right? You've got like strikes that are happening, all that you've got really good organizing that's happening, right? But it's we're not all on the same page yet. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, the reason why the strikes are important, and this is why Jane McAlevy's book is important too as well, is because what we've got to get past, I think, like one of the key things is like, in order to get what we want, we're going to have to make things uncomfortable. Right? This is what I was getting at with that Supreme Court case, is that when Brett Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, right, and the whole freaking right-wing crew, they get on there and they speak in like, you know, nice tones or polite language, and they don't kind of sound like crazies, right? The national media, especially the DC-based media,
they're killing it with civility,
right? And they all like, oh well, look, there's rational. They're thinking about the arguments.
They're being civil,
and it's just like that's like it's like you just put there's the lobotomy right there. Civility is the lobotomy. And one of the things that Jay McAlevey writes in that book is that no, you've got to create disruption. You have to create crises. That's what strikes are. The only power that we have, real power, is the strike. And like in the labor movement, but more broadly, we have to withdraw our consent, right? And make things uncomfortable, right? And that doesn't mean being assholes to people. It means closing things down, right? As Rick always says, greatest, like, you know, the greatest power of a working person is to put their hands in their pocket and say no, right? Not going along.
Well, I guess you're just a little more hopeful than I am at the moment.
Yeah, no, I know, but I'm just saying it's like, but I do think that's important.
I just feel like there's like just like an apathy or a malaise out there from talking to people, like within like the general voter and stuff like that. And like, great, yeah, you can talk about all the organizing that's going on with like, you know, small parts of the movement, but it's like, you know, we have an election in like 11 months, and it's
but this is what I'm saying. This is the election. Look, I think we're going to lose the midterms. I mean, I think the Democrats lose the majority in the midterms.
I mean, but it's almost like feel like there's like a 4-alarm fire and no one's pulling the fire alarm. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, because it's like this, right? It's like for everyone's, you know, it is that dog in the fire. Right, is for the longest time, like the kind of the organized left, right? The folks that are kind of like that, they've been like, I think, stuck in this civility, right? Particularly the Democratic Party, which, I mean, it's like, I hate having to kind of like always come back to the Democratic Party, but it's like it is the only freaking party on that even kind of like leans in that direction, right? And until we get to the point where we can actually build real power, I mean, any idea about just having a third party is freaking fantasy land. So it's just like, how do we kind of build kind of power within that structure? And it's like we don't have somebody with a bullhorn like on the broad left that has the access to the wheels of power. I mean, we got freaking Nancy Pelosi talking about pay-fors, right? I mean, seriously.
We're talking about how we still need a competent Republican Party.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like, I can't, I heard like 3 times this week. I heard people being interviewed on MSNBC, and I like increasingly can't tolerate MSNBC anymore because of this kind of garbage.
All it is just a fucking laugh. It's amazing how many Bush flunkies have gotten jobs at MSNBC over the past.
Wow. Yeah.
Talking about the media.
Yeah.
I think here's something I would lighten up the mood.
Go for it.
I thought it's great that Chris Cuomo just got exposed for being a dick this week.
See, Chris.
I think I don't know how. Honestly, like, I think he should have been fired when the like suspicions, like, or like the documentation that he was doing something with his brother. The fact that he was like doing opposition research and rat fucking like survivors and the people complaining, like levying these complaints against Cuomo, Governor Cuomo, you can't have a fucking job after this. Like, it's like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
I mean, imagine being a journalist or a producer there who lives in New York, is making about $100,000 a year, which probably isn't that much for them to live like in DC or New York, like getting by with like a local salary. And you got this fucking asshole
right,
like at the top of the food chain, like doing this stuff, and you're the one that has to take your job seriously. Like, you know what I mean?
Yep. Like,
there's just no way he gets his, this guy gets his job back at CNN.
Yeah, well, he's got like, look, I mean, he struggles too as well. His, I just looked this up. His annual salary is about $6 million a year.
Okay.
So he's getting about $6 million, and his net worth is about $12 million.
But also, like, the fallout from the Cuomo scandal, like, it is still just like hitting people, like in the party and all that stuff, and it's just like. I don't know if it was listening to the Majority Report or something else, but like, he really did set up an infrastructure in media and nationally to like grease the wheels for him to run for president.
Oh my God, yeah.
Like, he had that infrastructure going.
Totally.
Like, not just in New York, but all around the country. Yep. Like, and well, there goes that.
There goes that. Yep. Well, it's crazy. Well, a few other things will go before we go to a break. Of course, we've got the Omicron variant of COVID, which is exploding. And we shall see. Look, it's too early to really know what's going to happen with this. Early indications were that the symptoms are more mild, but of course, most of the symptoms that most of the cases that were discovered were in younger people who tend to have milder. So we don't really know what's going to happen. I mean, like, what's different? Get your freaking vaccines. Wear your damn mask.
I'm getting booster tomorrow.
Right. Yep. I got my booster. Got my booster already. I
heard the booster hurts.
But it did bother me at all.
Okay, that's what I figured. But my dad said
how was your? Did you have a reaction to your second shot?
No.
See, I got like my second shot. I got like wiped out. Like, it didn't like there was, I didn't feel like sick. I just felt I was exhausted. This one, I didn't even notice it. I mean, my arm.
I know people who felt good the first 2 shots and then wiped them out.
Yeah, I had the second one for me was the one wiped me out. This one was like nothing.
Yeah.
For me. So, I mean, it's just the same kind of deal. But just like, again, mask up, everybody. I mean, just like, I mean, I really don't want to keep on doing this. And I can tell you this, I've had more students basically test positive or tell me that, they test positive. And I'm not saying just making claims. I mean, they show me evidence. I tested positive of COVID or been exposed to somebody who's been test positive of COVID just in the past 2 weeks, and I have the entire semester. So, yep, things are ramping up. So as expected. So again,
hey, can't wait for that Menzinger's show in 2 weeks.
There you go. Good luck. See ya. Yeah. Just let me know where to send flowers. Well, they're saying that one of the things that they think was part of spreading it in New York was there was a like an anime conference, an animation conference there, where at least some of the cases were kind of emerged from, but we'll see. Here's one of the things. Okay, just really quick on this one. I just want to say that Daily Beast. Just want to say thank you to Daily Beast for kind of like focusing on and saying this about Steve Bannon, right? Because there's the coverage of Steve Bannon has been driving me nuts because it's still operating from the same framework that somehow we're living in this kind of like normal world of legality and people are rational actors and all this kind of nonsense. Like I've seen so much coverage of Steve Bannon and think, well, Steve Bannon's in trouble now, and like, oh, what's he going to do? And he's going to have to. He's in a tough spot. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? This is like Steve Bannon's sweet spot. Right, he's not worried. People think that he's shaking in his boots when Steve Bannon's like, I've got a freaking platform, and he's just going to be like lighting fires. He's like, we need to kind of burn everything down. He even said it. The whole thing is going to blowing up the whole system, right? And so, thank you to the Daily Beast for actually acknowledging that and getting out of this kind of like sense of like, oh, people are acting in very rational ways, and now he's in trouble because he's been caught, he's cornered, and now he's going to have to force to make tough decisions. I'm like, are you kidding me? Have you followed anything about this dude at all? Right? I
mean, it's just like this guy's been around for a decade, and we still fucking don't know like what his deal is.
It's astonishing to me. It's astonishing. Bannon is like. I mean, he knows how to whip people up, and he knows how to grift. I mean, that's what the dude is.
Yeah.
Right. And he believes all that nonsense. Right. So whatever. Anyways, it's good. Good news in the international front. Yep. Say Barbados kind of, cut the tether to the UK, saying, bye-bye, Queen Elizabeth. We're going to be an independent republic. We also saw first female president in Honduras, Xiomara Castro. Also kind of a cool little thing to be happening this week to remind us that there's things happening outside of our little freaking country. So pretty cool.
Time for another coup sponsored by the Democrats.
Another coup?
Oh, no, we're talking about Honduras, right? Wasn't it like wasn't it what Honduran coup? Wasn't that military coup?
Yeah. In 2009.
Yeah, wasn't that backed by the CIA and like Obama's people?
Never.
At the time?
Sean. The United States does not get involved with with
South American politics.
Respect. Totally. There's no history of that at all. We respect democracies, Sean.
But no, I mean this was one of the things that led to one of our immigration crises.
Yes, it is. Decade. Exactly.
Destabilizing these governments.
Exactly. 100%. Right. So you see how we do that? We go on, we completely fuck up a country, and then we kind of turn around and say, oh, now we got to build the wall because all these people that are left over from that. Yeah, it's all that. So whatever. But, it's good to see that. We'll see what happens next. I got to talk to Cyril about that too as well, get his perspective on that, because he's he knows that region really, really well. But cool. Anything else going on nationally that you want to focus on?
Not really. I guess in some good news, light news. Congrats to the plumber at Joel Osteen's church who was working on a toilet and found 500 envelopes of cash. Fell out of the wall.
It's God. That's God.
That is some drug dealer or Ozark type stuff when they fucking find money in the walls.
Exactly.
Gotta watch it somehow.
When's that next season coming up? Do you have any idea?
Oh yeah, season 4 or 5 is coming out.
I think.
January.
In January?
Yes, next month.
I was like so excited. I saw like a note on that too as well, but that was like that's a
can't
freaking
wait.
great show. Yeah.
I have to watch. I went to rewatch season 3 to catch up.
Oh, that's a good idea. Thank you for giving me that idea. Let me give you something to do. All right, this is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken. To remind you, you can help out support this show by going to patreon.com/rcpress today. We're going to be right back with this week's, PA focused. We'll be right back after this quick break. If I can get this little new soundboard to work, we shall see. Look at that. It's not even playing. Here we go. Hello. Are you going to play music? It's not playing music. Sound could not be played. Anyways, we're going to go like this, and I'm just going to do it manually, and we will be back right after this quick
Future.
about the technical problems here. I knew it. My when I lost my soundboard, when they discontinued that app or whatever like this, I haven't been able to find a good replacement. So anyway, sorry about that, everybody. Welcome back. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken, here once again with the one, the only Sean Kitchen. So Sean, not in Kansas anymore.
Nope. Had to throw the Wizard of Oz pun in there with Dr. Oz announcing his run for U.S. Senate. I mean, I think it's really, it's just gonna be a crazy fucking Senate and Republican primary next year. I don't know if we were on when the last time we talked, but Sean Parnell is no longer running for Senate.
Right.
I think that changed since the last time we were on. I'm not sure.
It was on the verge of changing. It was like when it looked like all the pressure was coming down.
Yeah. So Parnell's gone. In the wake of that, we have Dr. Oz who's running, and we have this guy David McCormick, who is another. He's from Connecticut. He runs a capital venture or a venture capital firm. So fun times.
Fun time. Well, do you think, okay, so you said, you were saying here that you think that he's going to become the front runner in the race? Yeah.
So he's positioning himself with people like David Urban, and David Urban's one of Trump's top people here in Pennsylvania. So I would expect, McCormick to get Trump's endorsement simply because of because one, I think he's a donor, but also his connections to David Urban, who is Trump's top person in Pennsylvania.
So does he have any roots at all in Pennsylvania, or is he just?
I think so. I think he's grew up. He's from Pennsylvania. Grew up in Pennsylvania. I think he's more like a well-connected, like brought up in a wealthy type family situation. So
what do you make of Dr. Oz getting in? Do you think that was like some sectors of the Republican Party freaking out, worrying that they didn't have a candidate?
No, I think it's a vanity campaign.
Yeah, it seems like he's completely unskilled. I saw him, he did a couple of interviews about running for this, and he couldn't basically say anything about Pennsylvania. Right?
Yeah.
It's like he just used these kind of broad things. Well, we all gotta gotta.
There's that place called Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, it's like Jesus. I'm like, holy cow! It's like as a TV personality, I thought he would have been had a little bit of a better shtick ready for him, but it seems like he just kind of walked on this and thought he could just wing it. That's what it seemed like.
Yeah, I think it's. I don't have much faith in his thing. So
McCormick,
yeah, I think
McCormick, you think is going to be it?
Yeah, I think McCormick's going to be the person they're going to pick to be the nominee. You have Carla Sands who's running. She's from California. She was the ambassador, I think, to Denmark or something like that. She was another big Trump financier out on the West Coast who has family here in Pennsylvania. But I think it's going to be McCormick. I think they're going to pick him because his connections with David Urban, who's a legitimate power player in Trump's orbit here in the state. So that's what I'm thinking.
We shall see. It's going to be really
Trump loves picking winners.
Yeah, he does. Right? He's got a track record of what? Well, actually, if you count the races that he's taken credit for after the fact, I think he's won everything.
Oh, so I got a fun story about Bucks County that we have to talk about once we get in there.
Do tell. Go ahead.
Did you see the follow-up article about Martino and the Enquirer did this week? They ran another story on. I didn't know if you caught it with your grading.
I think I did.
But they ran another. Yeah, so they ran another story. Apparently, 27 of the Democrats he was touting that he supported, were actually registered Republicans who won through cross-filing.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's what. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, no. He was there. They were claiming well, I'm sure people knew about this locally, obviously. But what's been reported was he supported X amount of Democrats and a bunch of Republicans.
Right. He said 40% of the candidates were Democrats, which was just bullshit.
and no one's really picked up on that until this week.
Yep.
I think Philly.com, the Inquirer, they did more digging into it, and here, like 27 of the Democrats, they all supported were cross-filed, so they pretty much like they ran on both tickets.
Yep.
So there's that. I didn't know if you caught that.
Gotta love that. Yeah. No, exactly.
Fucking going into our Bucks County stuff.
Yeah, it's like, so it's. I mean, you go look. He's gonna have an absolutely huge.
I mean, it's
influence.
all PR fucking spin. That's all it is. Just like you're running your own numbers.
Yep.
Like we support X amount of Democrats. No, you didn't. Like, and the Democrats actually did get support. We're in Harrisburg, who were going to win anyway, and had no opposition.
No, and I'm glad that article. I'm glad it made it out to like again, that was a great thing about having the Inquirer is it makes it out to kind of a bigger audience, so you can actually get to see some of the stuff taken down, which is exactly what should be happening in journalism for this stuff. Because you're absolutely right. It's like he's coming out there, and that's what he said in the New York Times interview. He basically said, "Look, I don't know what people are saying that it's a Republican or Democrat thing. It's like our thing was one thing: reopen schools, blah blah blah." And we know that's not the case. And actually, this is what, I mentioned before. We're going to have Dina Lagerman on the show. She ran for Central Bucks School District. She's also a writer. She's a teacher. And she wrote this great piece for breaking down some of the things that had happened. And like Martino's own narrative about how he got involved, when he got involved, and what he did, what he told the New York Times is like she just basically lays that on
It's
fire.
a fucking bootstrap story.
Totally.
Like it's just like the American
absolutely
pull yourself up by the bootstraps type of thing, and just like this narrative, this myth.
And that's what he's doing. He's crafting a timeline, crafting a narrative, and the timeline and the narrative is wrong. So I can't wait to be talking to her on the show on the 13th, Monday the 13th, on Out the Coop Live, to break that open a little bit. So one of the things that's also interesting was you're finding this happening in more and more school districts now. This is not just in Bucks County; it's across the state in Pennsylvania. We highlighted, I think, on the show the last one we did before Thanksgiving about the the lawsuit that's going forward about the kind of underfunding of schools in Pennsylvania. There's the second article that dropped, or I should say the article that just dropped in the New York Times, that's a kind of like a follow-up to that 2-part podcast, basically kind of expands on those interviews that I think his guy's name is Campbell did for the podcast, and talk about what was actually happening in those schools. And what lays bare in that article too is that what you're finding in school districts everywhere is that you've got a kind of systemic kind of long-term underfunding, and then in the wake of COVID you're finding that there's inadequate staffing, right? There's overcrowded classrooms, right? That resources have been cut even in a kind of pretty wealthy district like CB West or I'm sorry, Central Bucks. We should always be kind of cautious about talking about Central Bucks too, as well as just kind of like a wealthy district, because it is true that Doylestown is a more wealthy, and there's wealthy areas, but it's not entirely that, right? So we should be clear about that. It's not like Upper Milford or something, Lower Milford.
I mean, that whole area of like Central Bucks, I mean, you still have cookie cutter, tall house suburbs.
Yeah.
Like ranchers.
Yep. 100%. And
like in Warminster and Warrington and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I mean, I think that while it's true, yes, it has been historically a well-funded kind of district and has kind of some higher kind of average income. It's not all of that. And so they've also been experiencing the same kind of long-term cuts in school districts that you see, every other place too as well. And you also find that, in the aftermath of COVID, I mean, they talk about kind of like understaffed kind of custodial workers, not only having to kind of deal with everything that about COVID and the precautions for COVID and cleaning and all that stuff, but then you have these that TikTok challenge that went crazy where you had students that were going into schools and just destroying the bathrooms, right? Kind of like literally like dismantling toilets, ripping them off the walls, and that was happening in Central Bucks, right? And so that's something kind of like an additional stuff, and so people are at their breaking point, right? They're worn out. And so what was cool about that article is basically saying, look, while the school board is like, you have these, right-wing folks talking about critical race theory, and now they're going after social and emotional learning because, mental health should be taught at home, not in school, that kind of nonsense.
Or they're going after curriculums, like the
Right.
books,
Right.
like what books your students or kids are reading.
Exactly. They're going after all that. And meanwhile, like teachers are strapped, the staff are strapped, right? And that's having a direct impact on the students. So it's like, even exposing that, this whole the idea they care about the students is just a nonsense, because the students are having is negative impact. And while the parents go to these school boards and say, we're worried about our kids' mental health because you're asking them to wear a mask, right? What the teachers are saying and the staff are saying and the nurses are saying in the schools is that COVID, right, and these kind of like stress on resources and the things that are going on is there are mental health impacts on these kids. And now they're being threatened with removing, right, the necessary resources for even kind of dealing with that in the classroom. So it's a really good article. You check that out, because this is going to be an ongoing issue, and it's going to be an interesting one to see. Interesting. That's kind of probably the most bland word I could possibly use here, to see what happens in the Penridge School District, right? What happens in the Palisades School District, that has been, is going to be completely dominated by these kind of far right characters. We just had a thing. Whatever, bothering Sean this morning because, right? For example, you have Turning Point USA, as you know, Cyril has reported upon in the Bucks County Courier Times. They've got chapters in the Penridge School District, right? And they just started to kind of release their big media campaign on Instagram, basically announcing that they've had all of their flyers approved to put up all throughout the halls of the high school in Penridge, right? And they're well funded. Right. And I think it's the son or something like this of one of the school board members is also, connected, is one of the leaders of the TPUSA. And of course, this is being funded by these kind of national right wing kind of organizations that have ties to white supremacists and all this nonsense. Right. So we're going to see this play out in our school districts now for the next several kind of years. And that's, again, more call to organizing. So we shall see. And then in the good old PA1, you also got Brian Fitzpatrick is getting primaried from his right. Yep, just once again, right here in the Penridge School District, right here in Percy, Bradley Lanning, right, is announcing that.
Sounds white.
Oh, God, yeah. Well, it's America First Party, Sean. America, and he's saying he's not a Trumper, he's an American Firster.
It sounds pretty white.
It sounds pretty white. It's like I don't know. I know very little about this guy. I've looked for interviews, but we shall see. And then see
if I can do a quick Facebook search.
Yeah, I did, looked around those things, and it's what you'd expect. And then Caroline Avery of Bristol, she apparently was a horse trainer, and is deeply kind of in the Trump camp.
So when you were reading her quote, I was imagining it with a Philly Kenzo, Northeast Philly accent, just and you don't have a really good accent that matches the area. That's what I'm just thinking when I hear this woman speaking, because Bristol is not that great of an area. For those of you who don't know Bucks County that well, Bristol and the Chamonix, that whole, or Croydon and stuff like that. It's a harder working class part, and I could totally see her having, a thick Northeast Philly working class accent. I wouldn't be surprised if it's lifelong Bristol resident.
We shall see. It's going to be really interesting. And I really have no idea, without actually seeing these folks kind of out there kind of acting quite yet, it's really hard to say whether or not they're going to have any impact with Brian Fitzpatrick. But, as crazy as things have been throughout this district, you never know. Fitzpatrick has got deep, deep pockets, right? And he's connected to he's got his little machine going. But, look, this woman, Caroline Avery, this is what she says. Brian, of course calls him Brian, right? Brian hasn't done a good job of representing us the last few years, she said. In fact, he seems to be completely forgotten that he's supposed to represent us at all. Not so amazingly, Brian has joined 12 other turncoat Republicans to give Nancy Pelosi, the radical leftist leader of the House Democrats, a win she couldn't get from other House members. He voted with the radical Democrats to pass President Joe Biden's wildly inflationary $1.2 trillion budget busting so-called infrastructure bill. Is that the kind of thing that we elected Brian to do? Right? That's going to be her tact.
Yeah.
So we shall see. And, again, on the Democratic side, right now we've got Ashley Ahas and Paul Fermo are going to be running in that. They're both kind of military veterans. They're both folks who have, haven't had kind of super deep roots in kind of organizing, but they're on the ground. I mean, Ashley Ahas, especially, I've seen her on the ground quite a bit. Kind of organizing with folks, door knocking and that kind of stuff, but we shall see how this plays itself out. It's going to be an interesting one nonetheless. So pretty crazy. Anything else going around the state? Do you want to throw in?
Nothing too much. We got some, it's just been pretty much dead. Legislature is coming back on the 13th, so got about a week and a half for that. Commonwealth court cases coming up in a couple weeks. Versus Kustush, the Senate Republicans hired their firm out of like Oregon or Iowa or some shit like that, Idaho, to handle the subpoenas. So
that'll be fun.
There's gonna be who the fucking winner in this is? The firm that they hired. Because we're getting a fat fucking check from the state for a bunch of nonsense.
Totally. Well, one of the no, exactly.
That's the winner in this, the grifter. Like,
yep. They're like, you want to pay me for that? Sure. Okay.
I'll take the money.
We'll do that. Exactly. I'll take your money. We also did have, I think it was this past week, right, where Wolf actually vetoed the universal concealed carry legislation that went through.
Yes, that got vetoed. Which was like a no-brainer. But once again, you have these bills that Republicans are passing, and then they, continue their racist attacks on like Philadelphia, because of the crime that's happening in Philly.
I thought you meant when you said because. I thought you were saying because they're racists. Because
no. Also because they're racist. No, right, but like they're using the crime in Philly, like gun crime, and it's just like you're the one putting this legislation together. You're making it harder to go after straw purchases. Like your permitless concealed carry, like what anyone can carry. Like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like
it's basically a version of what they just passed in Ohio. They just passed that. Anybody over 18, have at it. No background checks. No, just go get it. It's like next to the gum at the checkout center, right? Checkout counter.
Yeah, put them in a fucking vending machine at this point. Like,
yeah.
But no, that's pretty much it.
Well, there you have it. Well, listen, I'm not going to go to a break right now. We're just going to go right into the last call because I have a little technical thing with this soundboard. So on today's last call, I just got a few kind of fun things to talk about. I came across this. Have you ever heard of mushroom leather, Sean?
No, I have not.
It is freaking fascinating. I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole on it, I admit. But there was an article published in The Guardian about it. And it's what the heck is it called? It's we just pull it up. It's the mycelium, right? Which is the this kind of like dense pack stuff, or kind of like out of which kind of mushrooms grow, right? It's this kind of stuff that holds together this kind of fungi that kind of holds together the ground and everything all over the place. Anyways, it's actually being called like a game changer when it comes to sustainable clothing. Of course, in addition, it's vegan. You have it that, but I just was like fascinated by this, and I started thinking about a couple things. Right, I started thinking about, they're coming up with this fabric, and apparently it feels like calf skin, right? A really kind of like soft leather, right? That they're able to kind of make this stuff in. And of course, like everything, of course, they have to start at the high end of stuff. They start producing these like, purses and things like this for like luxury branding and stuff. But it just got me thinking about this kind of sustainable, if we start really thinking about like a post fossil fuel world, we started thinking about stuff. The amount of materials that have not been explored that are far more sustainable. I mean, they're not going out and mining this stuff like from the ground. They're actually
I
growing
mean, hemp and paper.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, just like,
I mean, we made that illegal
I know, right?
in the country for so many years just because of paper publishers.
Exactly. And so, I mean, you see stuff like this, and I thought it was just absolutely like fascinating that they're growing this stuff in trays, like big trays, right? And it grows like crazy, right? And then they're turning it into actually products. So that means like you don't need vinyl, you don't need leather, right? You could use this. Now, I'm not saying this is like the end to everything, right? That there's one thing, but it got me thinking about that too, as well as like what kind of exploration and thinking about alternative materials have we not even touched because we've been so wedded and embedded in this kind of fossil fuel infrastructure. So I just thought it was a really interesting thing to come out. And it, like the Guardian focused on it. There was a couple articles that came out in part because there's a company in I think it's in California that's come out with one, and then there's a place in Oxfordshire in the UK that's kind of working with this stuff. So just kind of fascinating stuff. So I put a link in there if people want to check it out. It's just kind of like, a fun little piece, one of these things to kind of think about. Imagine that having a mushroom purse, a mushroom wallet, or whatever it might be. Pretty cool. Just don't lick it. Just kidding. Another stuff, I started watching the Wheel of Time show. It's really interesting. If you heard a couple weeks back, I had Gwendolyn Marshall on the show, and we talked about our kind of the D&D stuff. She's a philosophy professor and co-founder of Arcanist Press, and looked at this kind of alternative to race in D&D book. It was really good. Anyways, we were talking about that. We got talking about the Wheel of Time in the second half, and we'll see where it goes, but it seems like it has the potential to be a really kind of cool show. So, if you're looking for something to watch, do check it out. And then last night I got a chance to watch the first episode of the newest season of Star Trek Discovery. And I got to say, it's of all the seasons thus far, it was my favorite kind of first episode out of the block. It looks like it's going to be great. Very, very excited about that. And then I'll be checking out Foundation on Apple Plus, which is, like I said at the top of the show, one of our listeners, Chris, said, "Hey, yeah, did you know that comes out of Isaac Asimov's classic Foundation series?" And I'm like, duh, of course. That's great. So we checking that out too as well. But love to hear what other people are watching. Love to hear what other folks are kind of listening to these days. And we shall see. So what do we got going on this weekend, Sean?
Well, I'm getting my booster tomorrow.
Nice.
So
I got mine over break.
Parents are coming up for going to a craft fair in Harrisburg today, so we're gonna grab lunch in a bit. Nothing too much. I've been dabbling with some new music lately, so that's been fun.
Oh, do tell.
Like diving into like Joy Division.
Oh, that's like
fun stuff like that.
Going back to my era.
Joy Division, The Cure, New Order.
Okay, have you listened to Bauhaus yet?
No, I have not.
Dude, you gotta listen to Bauhaus. Do yourself a favor. The Sky's Gone Out. Freaking amazing.
But it's actually been pretty like I've listened to Joy Division like in the past, but like I'm actually surprised I didn't listen to them like while I was in college. Like when I was listening to like that type of stuff.
Dude, I was listening to them when I was in college.
more experimental stuff, but it's also been pretty interesting like hearing like you can pick up the like what bands are influenced by those albums and stuff like that.
Well, Amy says, yes, baby, Joy Division in the comments just now.
Yeah.
I'm with you, Amy.
But even like listening to like what the band did after the singer, passed away, New Order.
Yeah.
Like their stuff is like I never realized like they were big, but yeah.
Yeah, dude. I mean, New Order. That was all my era. Like that was all we were.
But like but like that's the type of stuff like you didn't hear about like even like growing up like you never heard that shit played on the radio. Like you know what I mean?
I did.
Well, I didn't. Okay, that was not
WHCL,
played on-
Hamilton College Radio. That's what.
Yeah, like, but that stuff wasn't being played on like 1029 or like more of your rock stations and stuff like that. Like, so it's been fun digging into that stuff.
Yeah, Amy also said KMFDM. LOL. You got to check them out.
Oh, I'm sure like Philly's other place, but all right.
That was back. I say that was back when college radio. That was back when college radio had really good stuff that was on. So check it out. But yeah, definitely check out Bauhaus. Anyways, everybody, that's what we got for this week. And sorry for a little technical craziness. I'm still trying to kind of get this soundboard issue worked out. So, anyways, listen. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for dropping by, everybody. We got some great shows coming up. I'll let you know what's happening on Monday. 2 weeks. Remember, we got Dina Lagerman. She'll be on to talk about her piece. Central Bucks is not okay. Right? Okay. Anyways, this is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken. Let's hope the outro music actually works here. Hey, look, there it is. It's playing. That's fantastic. This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken. On behalf of myself and the infamous Sean Kitchen, we'll be seeing you next week. Have a good one, everybody. Stay safe. Keep up the fight. See ya!